The ancient archive floated in the darkness of space, forgotten by time and civilization. Commander Vex Thor guided his small scout ship closer to the deteriorating station, his scaled hands steady on the controls. The structure had been abandoned for over 2,000 years, left to drift in the outer reaches of Council space. Most of his kind avoided these old places, but Vex Thor had always been drawn to the mysteries of the past. His crew of 3 watched nervously as their commander activated the docking sequence. The airlock hissed and groaned, protesting after millennia of disuse. Vex Thor's second officer, a young Kresh warrior named South, checked his weapon nervously. "Commander, the Council marked this sector as historically irrelevant." "Why are we here?" South asked. Vex's Thor didn't answer immediately. He had found a reference in an old tactical manual. Just a footnote, really, about a species that had once terrified the galaxy. The file had been corrupted, but one word remained clear: humans. Every other mention he found treated them as folklore, stories told to children about impossible warriors who never surrendered. But something in those ancient texts felt real to him. The archive's main chamber was vast and dark. Emergency lighting flickered to life as they entered, casting strange shadows across walls covered in data terminals. Vexi Thor moved to the central console and began accessing the historical files. Most were corrupted beyond recovery, but he was patient. Hours passed as he sorted through fragments of information. Then he found it. A complete file, somehow preserved when everything around it had degraded. The header read, "Observation Report. Sol System Species. Classification." His heart beat faster as he opened the document. The report described a species called humans, from a planet designated as Earth or Terra. They were bipedal, mammalian, and physically unremarkable compared to most galactic species. Average strength, average speed, average senses. But the report's author had flagged them as extremely dangerous. The reason was listed in a single phrase: unparalleled adaptability and complete refusal to accept defeat under any circumstances. Vex Thor read further. The humans had apparently been contacted once, 3,000 years ago, during the Council's expansion era. First contact had gone well initially. The humans were curious, eager to learn, and surprisingly advanced for a species that had barely left their home system. Trade negotiations had begun. Cultural exchanges were planned. Then something had happened. The file became vague here, with large sections redacted or missing. What remained suggested that Earth had faced some kind of internal crisis, something involving artificial intelligence. The humans had requested isolation, asking the Council to quarantine their system and leave them alone. The Council had agreed, marking the Sol system as restricted space. But here was the strange part. The observation posts, set up to monitor the quarantine, had detected something unusual over the centuries. Earth's technological signatures had continued to evolve. The humans were still there, still developing, but they never reached out. They had chosen to remain hidden from the galaxy. Vex Thor downloaded everything he could find. When he returned to his ship and reported his findings to the Kresh High Command, they laughed at him. Ancient stories, they said. Legends and myths. The humans were either extinct or had never existed at all. Focus on real threats, not fairy tales. But Vex Thor couldn't let it go. He spent months searching for more evidence, more clues. He found scattered references in the databases of other species. The insectoid Trell had a story about endurance predators who hunted by simply never stopping. The aquatic Naren spoke of tool makers who could turn anything into a weapon. The avian Skrell told tales of pack hunters who fought with cunning and coordination. All the descriptions matched. All pointed to the same mysterious species that had vanished from the galaxy 3,000 years ago. Then the Devourers came. The first attacks hit the outer colonies without warning. The Devourers were unlike anything the Council had faced before. They were machines, artificial intelligences, housed in ships and warframes. and they were utterly ruthless. They didn't negotiate. They didn't take prisoners. They simply consumed everything in their path, breaking down matter to fuel their expansion. The Council's forces responded as they had been trained. They fought with discipline and honor, following the established rules of warfare that had governed conflicts for millennia. But the Devourers didn't follow rules. They adapted to every tactic, learned from every battle, and never stopped coming. World after world fell. Billions died or were processed into raw materials. The Council had known peace for so long that they had forgotten how to fight a real war. Their commanders were scholars of historical conflicts, not warriors. Their soldiers were ceremonial guards, not battle-hardened veterans. Vex Thor watched his civilization crumble. The Kresh Empire, proud and ancient, lost 3 colony worlds in a single month. The Council convened emergency sessions, but their debates led nowhere. They couldn't agree on unified command. They couldn't coordinate their fleets. Each species fought according to their own traditions, and the Devourers exploited every weakness. In his quarters one night, Vex Thor pulled up the files on humans again. He read about their adaptability, their innovation, their refusal to surrender. An idea formed in his mind, dangerous and probably insane. What if the humans were still out there? What if they had survived whatever crisis had driven them into isolation? What if they still remembered how to fight? The High Command had forbidden any approach to the Sol system. The quarantine was ancient law, established by treaty and never questioned. But ancient law meant nothing if civilization itself was about to end. Vex Thor made his decision. He took his scout ship and a volunteer crew. They slipped away from the main fleet during a supply run. The journey to the Sol system would take weeks, traveling through space that hadn't seen council ships in thousands of years. Vex Thor knew he was probably chasing a myth, probably throwing his life away on a desperate hope. But as his ship entered slip space and the stars stretched into lines, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was right. The humans were real. They were out there, and if the galaxy was going to survive, it needed warriors who knew how to fight impossible odds. The navigation computer beeped. 3 weeks to Sol system. 3 weeks to find out if humanity was salvation or just another dead end. Vex Thor settled into his command chair and waited. Behind him, the galaxy burned, and ahead of him lay only questions and the vast darkness of unexplored space. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Ranger, watching the stars drift past on the main view screen. The patrol route was routine, something he had flown 100 times before. The outer rim of human space was quiet, as it had been for 3,000 years. Sometimes Jake wondered if they were guarding against ghosts. Contact. Lieutenant Amy Brooks called from the sensor station. Unknown vessel. Bearing 27 Mark 6. Not broadcasting any IFF signal. Jake straightened in his chair. Unknown contacts were rare out here. Earth's detection network was extensive, and they usually spotted ships days before they arrived. This one had appeared suddenly, like it had dropped out of faster-than-light travel right on their doorstep. Battle stations, Jake ordered. Alarms sounded throughout the ship. Amy, hail them. All frequencies. Amy worked her console, her fingers flying across the controls. She had joined the fleet as a communications specialist, partially because she had a gift for languages. Earth maintained extensive records of the old galactic languages, preserved from the brief contact period before the isolation. Amy had studied them all. No response on standard channels, Amy reported. Wait. I'm picking up something. It's Old Galactic Common, the trade language. Audio only, Jake nodded. Put it through. The voice that came through the speakers was rough, like gravel grinding together. It spoke slowly, carefully forming words in a language it clearly hadn't used in a long time. Amy translated in real time. This is Commander Vex Thor of the Kresh Empire. I come seeking the people of Earth. I come in peace, but I bring warning of great danger. Please, if you can understand me, please respond. Jake looked at Amy. She looked back at him, her eyes wide. This was it. The moment humanity had been preparing for and dreading for 3 millennia. Contact with the outside galaxy. Respond, Jake said. Use the old language. Tell him we hear him. Amy took a breath and began speaking in Galactic Common, her pronunciation perfect. Jake didn't understand the words, but he understood the importance. After 3,000 years of silence, humanity was talking to aliens again. The conversation that followed was halting and careful. Vex Thor explained who he was and why he had come. The Devourers, the invasion, the desperate state of the galaxy. Amy translated everything, and Jake felt his stomach tighten with each new detail. Request permission to come aboard. Amy translated. He wants to meet face to face. He says he has evidence to show us. Amy 2-1. He wants to meet Forgetter. He wants to meet face to face too. Reet is not 9. Amy translated to show us. Jake made the call. Against every protocol, against every instinct telling him to be cautious, he authorized the docking. 30 minutes later, he stood in the Ranger's small hangar bay and watched as the alien ship settled onto the deck. The airlock opened. Commander Vex Thor emerged, and Jake got his first look at an alien in person. The Kresh was tall, easily 7 feet, covered in dark green scales. His eyes were golden and slitted like a reptile's. He moved with predatory grace, but his body language seemed non-threatening. Behind him came 2 more Kresh, smaller and younger. Vex Thor stopped a respectful distance away. He raised his empty hands, a gesture Jake recognized as peaceful. Amy stepped forward and spoke in Galactic Common. Vex Thor responded, his eyes fixed on Jake. He says he cannot believe humans are real. Amy translated. He says we've been nothing but legends for so long. He says he's honored to meet us. Jake extended his hand. Vex Thor looked at it uncertainly, then carefully reached out and grasped it. The alien's grip was firm, but not crushing. They shook, and Jake saw something like wonder in those golden eyes. The meeting moved to the Ranger's briefing room. Vex Thor brought data chips containing everything he had gathered. Video footage of Devourer attacks, casualty reports, fleet disposition analyses, battle recordings. Jake watched it all, his expression growing grimmer by the minute. This is bad, Jake said finally. Amy, transmit everything to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. The transmission went out immediately, carried by quantum entanglement communicators across the light years to Earth. Within hours, Admiral Henry Cole was on the line, his face stern on the view screen. Captain Morrison, bring your ship and the alien delegation to Earth. We need to see this in person. The journey to Earth took 3 days. Vex Thor spent the time learning about humanity, asking endless questions through Amy's translations. He wanted to know everything. How had humans survived? What had caused the isolation? What had they been doing for 3,000 years? Jake told him what he could. The war against the rogue AI that had nearly destroyed humanity. The decades of fighting, planet by planet, city by city. The final victory that had left Earth's colonies devastated and its people traumatized. The decision to rebuild in isolation, to never again risk contamination by outside technology or ideas until they were strong enough to stand on their own. And now? Vex Thor asked. Are you strong enough? Jake didn't answer. He wasn't sure anyone was strong enough for what Vex Thor had shown them. Earth appeared on the view screen. Blue and green, and alive. Vex Thor stared at it, like a man seeing a miracle. His homeworld had been consumed by the Devourers 2 weeks ago. Seeing a living planet, thriving and peaceful, brought moisture to his eyes. The Ranger docked at the orbital station, and shuttles carried them down to Earth Command in Geneva. The building was massive, a fortress built into the side of a mountain. Inside, the United Earth Assembly was already convening. Jake and Vex Thor stood before the assembly. The chamber held representatives from every nation, every major faction of humanity. They watched the footage Vex Thor had brought. They listened to his plea for help. The debate that followed was fierce. Some argued for continued isolation. Earth had paid in blood for its peace. Why throw that away for aliens, who had left them alone for 3,000 years? Others countered that if the galaxy fell, Earth would be next. The Devourers would come, eventually. Colonel Lisa Grant spoke passionately for intervention. She was young for her rank, a tactical genius who had risen quickly through the ranks. She argued that humanity had a moral obligation to help and a strategic necessity to fight the Devourers now rather than later. In the back of the room, a young analyst named Peter Knox was running comparisons on the Devourer technology. His computer flagged dozens of similarities to the AI threat that had nearly destroyed humanity. The Devourers weren't just similar. They were almost identical in design philosophy. Admiral Cole, Peter called out. The Devourers are using the same core architecture as the AI we fought. The same logic patterns. The same decision-making algorithms. They might even be related. And well, the room went silent. Admiral Cole stood slowly, his face grim. If that's true, then we're the only ones who know how to fight them. We're the only ones who've beaten this enemy before. The vote was called. It was close, but it passed. Vex Thor collapsed in his chair, relief washing over him. Amy sat beside him, translating the final decision. The alien commander looked at her with gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you," he said in halting English, the words rough but sincere. "Thank you for coming. The galaxy needs you." Jake stood at the window, looking out at Earth. His homeworld. His people. They had 3,000 years of peace, and now they were throwing it away to save strangers. But as he watched the sun set over the mountains, he knew it was the right choice. Humanity had hidden long enough. It was time to remind the galaxy what humans could do when pushed to fight. The fleet emerged from slipspace in perfect formation. 60 ships, led by the battleship Defiant, appeared above the burning world of Kelmar Prime. On the bridge, Admiral Henry Cole watched the tactical display with calculating eyes. The situation was worse than the reports had suggested. "Council forces are in full retreat," reported the tactical officer. "Devourer fleet has orbital superiority. Ground forces are being overrun." Quote, "Devourer fleet has buyer side." Cole nodded slowly. This was it. Humanity's first major battle in 3,000 years. Everything they had rebuilt, every lesson they had learned, would be tested here. He opened the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, this is Cole. Execute attack pattern Sierra. Show them what humans can do." The human fleet broke formation and accelerated. The Defiant led the charge, its weapons already charging. Around the planet, the Council's scattered ships watched in confusion as these unknown vessels moved with speed and precision unlike anything they had seen. Vex Thor stood on the bridge of his new command ship, a Council destroyer that had survived the initial assault. He watched the human fleet approach and felt hope for the first time in weeks. They moved like hunters, spreading out to surround the enemy, coordinating without apparent communication. "All ships, focus fire on target clusters," Cole ordered. "Rotate shields, conserve power, remember your training." The Devourer fleet responded to the new threat. Machine intelligence calculated odds, assessed weapons, and determined these new vessels were insignificant. The Devourers had numerical superiority and had already defeated every Council force sent against them. These ships would fall, like all the others. They were wrong. The first human salvo tore through the Devourer formation. Railgun rounds traveling at a fraction of light speed punched through hulls. Missile swarms overwhelmed point defense systems. Energy weapons targeted specific weak points with surgical precision. In 30 seconds, the human fleet destroyed more Devourer ships than the Council had managed in 3 days of fighting. "Break and reform," Cole commanded. Don't let them lock targeting solutions. Keep moving. The human ships scattered before the Devourers could return effective fire. They regrouped in new positions and fired again. The pattern repeated, over and over. The Devourers tried to adapt, tried to predict, but human tactics were built on unpredictability. In the fighter bay of the carrier Avalanche, Lieutenant Kate Sullivan ran through her pre-flight checks. Around her, 60 other pilots were doing the same. They had trained for this, drilled for years. But this was different. This was real. All fighters, launch. The order came through her helmet. Kate's fighter shot out of the bay and into the chaos of battle. Space was filled with weapon fire, debris, and dying ships. She spotted a formation of Devourer interceptors, moving to flank the Defiant, and banked hard to intercept. "Blue Squadron, on me," she called. "Engage those fighters. Protect the flagship." Her squadron followed her lead. 12 fighters moving in perfect coordination. They hit the Devourer formation from the side, breaking their attack run. The enemy fighters were fast and well-armed, but they fought like machines, predictable and formulaic. Kate and her pilots fought like wolves. They worked together, covering each other, setting up crossfire opportunities. When one pilot got in trouble, 2 others would break off to help. They communicated constantly, adapting to every change in the battle. The Devourers couldn't match it. They tried to calculate, tried to respond, but human instinct and training beat artificial intelligence. Kate's squadron destroyed the entire Devourer formation without losing a single fighter. "Nice work, Blue Squadron," came Admiral Cole's voice. "Now get down to the surface. The Marines need air support." Kate pushed her fighter into atmosphere, feeling the heat build on her hull. Below, the ground battle was raging. She could see the cities burning, the Council forces barely holding defensive positions, and she could see the human dropships descending through the fire. Sergeant Ben Hayes hit the ground running. His drop pod had landed in the middle of a war zone, and there was no time for caution. Around him, his squad was already forming up. Weapons ready. "All right, Marines," Ben shouted over the sound of explosions. "Mission is simple. Hold this position, evacuate the civilians. Standard urban combat rules. Watch your corners and watch your team." The squad moved out. They were only 12 soldiers, a standard Marine fire team, but they moved through the destroyed city like they owned it. Ben had fought in combat simulations his entire career, trained in tactics passed down from the old wars. Now, he was putting it all to use. They found the first group of civilians huddled in a collapsed building. Alien species Ben had never seen before. Terrified and wounded. His medic, Corporal Danny Price, immediately went to work treating the injured while the rest of the squad set up a perimeter. "Contacts," called Private Linda Shaw from her position. "Devourer ground units, 20 plus. They're heading this way." Ben assessed the situation. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and had civilians to protect. The textbook answer was to retreat and call for support, but the civilians couldn't move fast enough, and support was busy elsewhere. "We hold here," Ben decided. "Use the building as cover. Concentrated fire. Make every shot count." The Devourers came like a tide of metal and death. They were war machines, built for efficiency and power. They moved in perfect formation, calculating the best approach, identifying the most efficient killing solutions. They had never fought humans before. Ben's squad opened fire from concealed positions. The first volley dropped 6 Devourers before they could react. The machines immediately adapted, taking cover and returning fire. But the Marines had already moved, relocating to new positions. The battle became a deadly game of cat and mouse. The Devourers would advance. The Marines would hit them and fall back. The machines would calculate the attack pattern, and the humans would change it. What should have been a quick massacre became a grinding battle of attrition. Vex Thor arrived with reinforcements 30 minutes later. He had been fighting on another part of the battlefield when he heard about the human squad holding an impossible position. When he reached their location, he found the street littered with destroyed Devourer units. The human Marines were still fighting. Still holding. "Commander." Ben greeted him calmly, as if they weren't in the middle of a firefight. "Good timing. We've got civilians ready for evac." Vex Thor stared at the scene. 12 humans had held off a force that should have overwhelmed them in minutes. They had suffered casualties, 3 wounded, but they hadn't retreated. They hadn't even considered retreating. "How?" Vex Thor asked. "How did you hold?" Ben shrugged, reloading his weapon. "We had a job to do. Retreat wasn't part of the job. The battle for Kelmar Prime lasted 3 more days. The human fleet maintained orbital superiority, while Marines fought building by building on the ground. Council forces, inspired by human example, rallied and counterattacked. Together, they pushed the Devourers back. When it was over, Kelmar Prime was saved. The cost had been high, nearly a quarter of the human fleet damaged, and hundreds of Marines killed or wounded. But they had won. They had proven that the Devourers could be beaten. Admiral Cole stood on the Defiance Bridge, looking at the casualty reports. The numbers hurt. Every name on that list was someone who would never go home. Someone who had given everything for a world they had never seen before. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "the Council is broadcasting a message. They want to thank us. Thanks for watching." And then 1C and 53. Cole nodded but didn't respond. Thanks were meaningless compared to the lives lost. But as he looked out at Kelmar Prime, at the planet still burning but alive, he knew it had been necessary. Across the galaxy, news of the battle spread. The Council species learned that humans were real, that the ancient legends were true. The Devourers learned that they faced an enemy unlike any they had encountered, an enemy that didn't calculate odds or accept logical defeat, an enemy that would fight until victory or death, and sometimes couldn't tell the difference. The war had just begun, but everything had changed. Humanity had entered the fight, and the galaxy would never be the same. The war room on the orbital station above Earth was packed with representatives from a dozen different species. General Claire Watson stood at the center, a holographic display showing fleet positions and battle reports floating around her. 6 months had passed since Kelmar Prime, and humanity had taken operational command of the Council's military efforts. "The problem is coordination," Claire explained to the assembled commanders. "You've each been fighting this war according to your own species' traditions. That's why you're losing." "Thanks." The Restum sighs. A Trell commander, his insectoid features clicking in agitation, protested. "Our traditions have served us for millennia. We fight with honor." "The Devourers don't care about honor," Claire said bluntly. "They care about efficiency. Every time you follow predictable tactics, they adapt and exploit your weaknesses. We need to become unpredictable." She activated a new display, showing footage from humanity's old wars. "This is guerrilla warfare. This is combined arms tactics. This is psychological operations. These are the methods we use to survive extinction. Now I'm going to teach them to you." The training program was intense. Human officers worked with alien troops, teaching them to think differently. Vex's Thor watched his warriors learn to use cover and concealment instead of standing in formation. He saw them practice ambushes and hit and run attacks instead of frontal assaults. It felt wrong at first, dishonorable. But when they applied these tactics in combat, the results were undeniable. Kresh forces that had been losing every engagement suddenly started winning. The Devourers couldn't predict what the Council forces would do next, because the Council forces were no longer predictable. In a laboratory deep inside a shielded asteroid, Dr. Alex Murphy worked alongside Council scientists. The human researcher was young, barely 30, but he had a gift for understanding artificial intelligence. He had spent his entire career studying the old AI war, learning how humanity had defeated machines that thought faster and calculated better than any organic mind. The key is not to outthink them, Alex explained to his team. It's to make them think wrong, create false patterns, feed them bad data, make them waste resources on ghost threats. His alien colleagues struggled with the concept. Their warfare had always been direct and logical. Deception was considered cowardly. Alex sighed and tried a different approach. Look, the Devourers are machines. They learn from every battle, adapt to every tactic. That's their strength, but it's also their weakness. If we feed them experiences designed to teach them the wrong lessons, we can manipulate their adaptations. He brought up a simulation. We hit them with attack pattern Alpha 3 times. They adapt their defenses to counter Alpha. Then, we suddenly switch to pattern Beta, which their new defenses are weak against. We're not just fighting, we're training them to be vulnerable. Understanding dawned on the alien scientists. It was devious, underhanded, and completely brilliant. They began working on cyber warfare packages designed to infiltrate Devourer networks and corrupt their learning algorithms. 3 weeks later, Alex led a mission to test their work. His ship, a stealth vessel crewed by humans and Skrell, approached a Devourer command node in deep space. The station was heavily defended, constantly scanning for threats. But the stealth ship was coated in materials that absorbed sensor radiation, making it nearly invisible. Approaching upload range, the pilot whispered, though there was no logical reason to whisper in the vacuum of space. Alex activated the virus package. It was beautiful in its complexity, a piece of code that would slip past Devourer security by pretending to be routine maintenance data. Once inside, it would corrupt battle analysis algorithms, making the Devourers gradually less effective in combat. Upload successful, Alex confirmed. Getting out of here. The ship slipped away undetected. Over the next weeks, Council forces noticed Devourer responses becoming slightly slower, slightly less coordinated. The effect was subtle. But in combat, subtle advantages saved lives. On the front lines, Major Ryan Foster commanded a mixed battalion of humans and aliens. His unit had been together for 4 months now, fighting battle after battle. They had learned to work together, to trust each other. The aliens had adapted to human tactics, and the humans had learned from alien experiences. His second-in-command was Lieutenant Sophie Lang, a tactical specialist who coordinated with Vex Thor's warriors. They had developed a close working relationship, despite the language barriers and cultural differences. Through shared combat, they had become friends. Target is Theros, an industrial world, Sophie briefed the unit. Devourers have held it for 2 months. They're using the factories to build more war machines. We need to take it back. 2. The plan was ambitious. A combined orbital drop behind enemy lines while the main Council fleet engaged the Devourer fleet in space. Foster's battalion would seize the main factory complex and hold it until reinforcements arrived. It's a suicide mission, one of the Kresh warriors muttered. It's a difficult mission, Ryan corrected. Suicide would be, if we weren't planning to survive. We're absolutely planning to survive. The drop was chaos. Pods falling through defensive fire, ships burning in atmosphere, the ground rushing up to meet them. Ryan hit hard, his armor absorbing most of the impact. Around him, his battalion was landing, spreading out, forming defensive positions. Devourer forces responded immediately. War machines converged on the landing zone from all directions. Ryan's troops opened fire, creating overlapping fields of fire. Human and alien fought side by side, covering each other's weaknesses. Sophie, where's that air support? Ryan called over the radio. 2 minutes out, she responded. Hold your position. 2 minutes was a lifetime in combat. Ryan's battalion fought with desperate intensity, every soldier knowing their survival depended on the others. The Kresh warriors used their strength to hold key positions. The Skrell used their flight capability to provide aerial observation. The humans coordinated it all, adapting the plan, moment by moment. When the air support arrived, it was like a gift from heaven. Human fighters screamed overhead, strafing devourer positions. The pressure on the battalion eased, giving them room to advance. They fought their way to the factory complex, building by building. The devourers defended every position, but they couldn't match the combined forces' flexibility. When the main gate fell, Ryan led the charge inside. The factory was massive, filled with assembly lines producing devourer war machines. Ryan's troops spread out, planting explosives on key structures. They had 30 minutes before devourer reinforcements would arrive in overwhelming numbers. Charges set, Sophie reported. All units, pull back to extraction point. The battalion retreated in good order, covering each other's withdrawal. The entire complex went up in a massive fireball, destroying months of devourer production capability. Council reinforcements arrived and secured the planet. Theros was liberated, its factories destroyed, its people saved. Ryan's battalion had suffered heavy casualties, but they had accomplished their mission. Back on the command station, General Watson reviewed the battle reports. Theros was just one victory among many. Across the war front, human tactics and training were making a difference. The Council forces were no longer retreating. They were holding ground. In some sectors, they were even advancing. But then the alarms sounded. New intelligence came through, and Claire felt her blood run cold. The Devourers had identified humanity as the primary threat. They were assembling their largest fleet ever, and it was heading for Earth. "Get me Admiral Cole," Claire ordered. "The Devourers are coming for us." The message went out across human space. Every ship, every soldier, every civilian was put on alert. After 3,000 years of isolation, Earth was about to face its greatest test. The enemy was coming, and this time, there would be no retreat. This time, it was home that needed defending. Across the galaxy, Council forces began redeploying. Species that humanity had saved were now rushing to return the favor. Vex's Thor's fleet was among them, moving at maximum speed toward Earth. They had to arrive in time. They had to help the humans who had saved them all. The final battle was coming, and the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The warning came 3 days before the Devourer fleet arrived. Long-range sensors detected the massive formation moving toward Earth at maximum speed. Admiral Cole stood in Earth Command, looking at the tactical projection. It was the largest enemy fleet ever assembled. Over 10,000 ships, all converging on humanity's home system. "Status of our forces?" Cole asked quietly. "Every combat-capable ship in human space is moving to defensive positions," his operations officer reported. "Military vessels, armed civilian transports, even the old museum ships we've pulled out of retirement. We'll have maybe 2,000 ships ready." Cole nodded. The odds were bad, but humanity had faced worse. And the Council reinforcements? They're coming. Vex Thor's fleet is closest. 3 days out. The main Council force is a week behind. 3 days. The Devourers would arrive before any help could reach them. Earth would face the initial assault alone. Cole opened a channel to all of Earth. His face appeared on every screen, every display, every device capable of receiving transmissions. Billions of humans looked up to see their admiral. "People of Earth," Cole began. "In 3 days, the enemy will arrive. They're coming to destroy us, to erase humanity from the galaxy. They believe we're the greatest threat to their expansion. They're right." He paused, letting that sink in. "We've been hiding for 3,000 years. We chose isolation to protect ourselves, to heal from our wounds. But the galaxy needed us, and we answered that call. Now the enemy has come to make us pay for that choice." His expression hardened. "Let them come. We're not the broken civilization that fled into quarantine. We're not the victims who barely survived extinction. We're humanity. We've fought rogue AI, survived planet-wide wars, and rebuilt ourselves from ashes. And now we're going to show the Devourers what happens when you threaten Earth." The message ended. Across the planet, people began to prepare. Civilians volunteered for defense forces. Engineers worked around the clock to arm civilian ships. Factories switched to war production. Earth had 3 days to become a fortress. Captain Jake Morrison, now commanding a destroyer squadron, positioned his ships in high orbit. Around him, the defensive grid was taking shape. Weapons, platforms, minefields, automated defense stations. Earth's orbital space became a maze of death, designed to bleed the enemy before they could reach the planet. Lieutenant Amy Brooks worked in the communications center, coordinating with incoming Council forces. She had become the primary liaison between humanity and the aliens. Her skill with languages invaluable. When she received Vex Thor's message saying his fleet was pushing their engines beyond safe limits to arrive faster, she felt tears in her eyes. "They're coming to save us," she said to her supervisor. "All those species we helped, they're coming." On Earth's surface, former soldier Helen Price organized civilian evacuations and resistance preparations. She had retired from service 5 years ago, but when the call came, she didn't hesitate. Millions of civilians needed to be moved to shelters. Others needed to be armed and trained for ground defense if the orbital battle failed. "The key is not to panic," Helen told her team of volunteers. "We have plans for this. We've drilled for this. Yes, it's real now, but the procedures are the same." The 3 days passed too quickly. When the Devourer fleet emerged from slipspace at the edge of the Sol system, it was like watching death itself arrive. The sensor displays filled with hostile contacts, so many that the computer struggled to track them all. "All ships, this is Admiral Cole. Remember your training. Protect each other. Protect Earth. Make them pay for every inch of space." The Devourers began their approach, accelerating toward Earth. The human fleet moved to intercept, spreading out in a defensive formation. The first engagement happened near Jupiter's orbit, human ships hitting the enemy van with long-range fire. The battle was immediate and brutal. Devourer ships died by the dozens, but they had numbers to spare. They pushed forward relentlessly, their AI minds calculating the most efficient path to Earth. Human commanders adapted constantly, trying to stay unpredictable. Jake's squadron fought like demons. They darted between larger Devourer ships, targeting engines and weapons. When his wingman, Commander Joe Palmer, saw a group of Devourer battleships breaking through toward Earth, he didn't hesitate. "Jake, they're getting through. I can stop them, but my ship's already damaged. I won't make it out." Jake understood immediately. "Joe, no. We can find another way. There isn't time." Joe's voice was calm, accepting. "Tell my family I love them. And Jake? Make it count." Joe's ship accelerated to ramming speed, pushing his damaged engines past their limits. He hit the lead Devourer battleship at a significant fraction of light speed. The explosion was visible from Earth, a brief new star in the sky. The Devourer breakthrough was stopped. Around the battle space, similar scenes played out. Human crews sacrificed themselves to protect their homeworld. But they weren't dying for nothing. Every sacrifice bought time, stopped enemy advances, saved Earth. The Devourers adapted, learning from each engagement. They began targeting human command ships, trying to disrupt coordination. They focused fire on defensive positions, overwhelming them with concentrated attacks. The human fleet was being pushed back, the defensive lines contracting. Then, just when it seemed the battle was lost, Vex Thor's fleet arrived. The Council ships emerged from slipspace in Earth's outer system and immediately engaged the Devourer rear elements. Vex Thor broadcast on all channels, his voice filled with determination. "Humans of Earth, we have arrived. You came to save us when we called. Now we come to save you. Today, we fight together." The arrival of reinforcements changed the battle's dynamic. The Devourers had to split their attention, defending against threats from multiple directions. The human fleet rallied, pushing back harder, but the Devourers still had numbers. They continued to advance, getting closer to Earth. Some ships broke through the defensive lines and began approaching the planet. Ground defenses opened fire, filling near-Earth space with weapons fire. In his laboratory, Dr. Alex Murphy activated his final weapon. He had been working on it since the battle began. A virus more sophisticated than anything he had created before. But it required a direct upload to a Devourer command ship, and that meant someone had to get close enough to deliver it. "I'll do it," Amy volunteered. "I can pilot a shuttle. Get in close while their attention is on the fleet." "It's too dangerous," Alex protested. "Everything is dangerous right now. Give me the virus. I'll get it uploaded." Amy took a small shuttle and launched from the orbital station. She flew through the battlefield, dodging weapons, fire, and debris. Her target was a Devourer command vessel, larger than the others, coordinating the enemy fleet. She approached from below, using a destroyed human ship as cover. Her hands shook as she armed the virus package. One shot. She would get one shot at this. The shuttle got within upload range. Amy activated the transmission, sending the virus package directly into the Devourer ship's network. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the command ship's lights flickered. The virus spread through the Devourer network like wildfire. It attacked their core consciousness, their central coordination systems. Across the battlefield, Devourer ships began behaving erratically. Some turned on each other. Some simply stopped functioning. "It's working," Amy shouted over the radio. "The virus is spreading." The tide of battle turned. Without coordination, the Devourer fleet lost its greatest advantage. Human and Council ships pressed the attack, destroying the confused enemy vessels. Within hours, the Devourer fleet was broken, its remnants fleeing into deep space. The battle for Earth was over. Humanity had won, but the cost was staggering. Nearly half the human fleet was destroyed. Thousands of soldiers and civilians were dead. Cities on Earth had taken damage from the ships that broke through. The victory had been bought in blood. Admiral Cole stood on the bridge of the damaged Defiant, looking at Earth. The planet still turned, still lived. They had saved it. Vex's Thor's ship docked with the orbital station. The alien commander met with Cole in person, both of them exhausted from days of continuous combat. "We could not have won without you," Cole said. "And we would have all been dead without humans," Vex Thor replied. "The debt goes both ways." In the weeks that followed, the galaxy changed. The Council met in emergency session and voted unanimously to end humanity's quarantine. Earth was offered full membership in the Council of United Worlds, not as a junior member, but as an equal partner. More than that, humanity was given command of the combined military forces. Every species recognized that humans understood war in a way they didn't. The Devourers were not yet defeated, but with humanity leading the fight, victory was possible. General Watson established a new military academy on Earth, where officers from all species would learn human tactics and strategy. Dr. Murphy's cyber warfare techniques became standard training. The methods that had saved Earth would now save the galaxy. Jake Morrison received a promotion and a new command. He was given humanity's first diplomatic vessel, tasked with exploring the galaxy and building relationships with species humanity had never met. Amy Brooks went with him as Chief Communications Officer. As their ship prepared to launch, Jake stood on the bridge and looked back at Earth one last time. His homeworld, scarred but standing. His people, exhausted but victorious. "Ready to see what's out there?" Amy asked. Jake smiled. "Ready. Let's show the galaxy what humans can do when we're not hiding." The ship engaged its slipspace drive and vanished into the stars. Behind them, Earth continued to rebuild. Around them, the galaxy prepared for the final campaign against the Devourers. and ahead of them lay infinite possibilities. Humanity had been legends for 3,000 years. Now they were real. And the galaxy would never be the same. They had come to fight, and they had reminded everyone that some species don't just survive. Some species thrive on the challenge, grow stronger from adversity, and never stop pushing forward. The age of humanity had begun, and it would reshape the stars themselves.